Just like to offer a big shout out to Touchdown Digital for sponsoring this week's video. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Glenn Summerlin, you're watching Sniper Photography. So good to have you all here today. Look, this is part 2 of the video series that I've done so far about our trip to Alaska and Canada, or the Canadian Rockies. Now, the Canadian Rockies I have been to many, many times, and I just can't get enough of that place. I mean, quite frankly, if ever the opportunity arose, I'd probably live there. Just an incredible location, the Canadian Rockies. So what we did, we flew back from Anchorage, Ted Stevens Airport, to Vancouver, and then we hired a car, an SUV, and we drove for about two and a bit hours to Whistler, which is where they held the Winter Olympics, and a really beautiful location, Whistler. If you're into snow skiing or mountain biking, that's the place for you to go to. Mountain biking is in summer, and obviously the snow skiing is in winter. And the accommodation we stayed at was just absolutely superb. I'll put a link to that and every other location or establishment we stayed at or area we went to at the bottom of this video in the description. But Whistler was our first stop. Took a few nice shots there. I'll put them up as we go through this video. Spent 2 days there, and then from there we drove to Jasper. Now Jasper is Jasper National Park, and it's a fair go, it's a fair drive. It's about 9.5 hours from Whistler to Jasper. Now Jasper is really, really nice. It's a beautiful, beautiful location in the Canadian Rockies. It can get very cold there obviously in winter. We were there 3 weeks ago, so they were just coming out of summer. Once again, took some great images of around the Jasper area, especially of the wild animals or the wildlife, meaning the elk and the deer, and you'll see those photographs or these images through this video, as I said earlier. Just a spectacular region. Jasper is really, really good to visit. It's, I mean, I've been there probably 4 times now in the past 7 years. We tend to go every 12 months to Canada, or every 14 months we travel. The wife and I travel to Canadian Rockies. We just can't get enough of the place, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. Jasper has a lot to offer. Speaking as a photographer, it has so many opportunities. Compositional wise, it's just incredible. And the further you go into Jasper and head towards Banff, Lake Louise and Moraine Lake, well then you're just in postcard territory, and it's incredible actually. The Canadian Rockies for photography is just outstanding. If you take a bad photograph or a bad image whilst you're travelling through the Canadian Rockies, you want to give photography away, quite frankly, because it's almost impossible to take a bad photograph. The place is that good, you know. Just brilliant. So after a few days in Jasper, well, we actually stayed at Jasper Bungalows. It was actually Patricia Lake Bungalows. We stayed right on the Patricia Lake, and you'll see the image I took here of the jetty leading out into the water. Another great location. The bungalows are owned by a family. It's a privately run accommodation area. Absolutely fantastic. 4 o'clock in the morning, we had a massive bull elk walk through where we were staying, and he was calling out for the girls because it is rutting season. That's where the males get all their females together for breeding, and they're very protective of them. So if ever you do come to Canadian Rockies, don't approach these animals because they will have a go at you, and they are huge. They're as big as a prime mover. They're massive animals. So yeah, he came through about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. I was up actually, ready to go out with the camera, and I heard this noise out near our cabin, and there he was, massive timber coming out of his head. Unbelievable creature. Just an unbelievable experience. So after that, we drove to Moraine Lake. Now Moraine Lake, seriously, is, they say that it's the second most photographed location in the world, and I have to agree with that. Now, if you're traveling to Moraine Lake, and it doesn't matter where you're coming from, whatever part of the world you're watching this from, I'm going to give you a free tip. First up, save your money. The second tip is you need to stay at the Moraine Lake Lodge. Now, it's not cheap. It's $1,500 a night Australian. So we stayed there for 2 nights. The reason we chose to do this was because on the bucket list was the photograph of Moraine Lake, which you'll see through this video. And we arrived there on the Tuesday afternoon. We checked in, and the girl at the checkout was from Newcastle here in Australia, would you believe it? She was over there working. Had a good chat with that young lady, and that afternoon we went up to the rock pile, which is at the far end of Moraine Lake. And you actually walk up to the rock pile and you look down into the lake. It is just absolutely magnificent, and you'll see the images here. Now, I scouted out the location on the Tuesday afternoon. Come Wednesday morning, I was on that rock face at 3 a.m. and it was -14. So yeah, it was a bit cold. I had ice building up around the tripod head. I had ice all over the camera bag and the camera. Between shots, I was trying to keep the batteries warm and covering the camera with a chamois, like a cloth type of thing, microfiber cloth it was. That's right, and just to keep everything warm. And I started shooting about 3:15. Done a bit of astro stuff, as you can see here, right up until about 7 a.m. and that's when the show ended. Not because of the light, but because of the people. The car park here at Moraine Lake closes at around about 6 a.m. It's closed, it's too busy. And they only let the tourist buses or the tourist coaches in with hundreds of people on them. And they, quite frankly, they just look like cattle trucks to me. I mean, they're pulling these tourists out of Banff. They come up to Moraine Lake, they scramble all over the rock face like ants at a barbecue. And it really is difficult to try and get these shots. So hence, that's why we stayed there and copped the expense of $1,500 a night Australian money to stay there to capture these images. And I'm glad we have, or I'm glad we did do that. So Moraine Lake is it's just spectacular. But my suggestion is save your pennies, save your money and stay at Moraine Lake Lodge. It is absolutely fantastic. No one can get in there unless you're staying there. You're sitting there having breakfast in this glass auditorium type of thing, and you've got people outside trying to come in. Well, they can't get in because they're not staying at the lodge. So it is a private, very upmarket establishment. They give you afternoon tea in the library. Beautiful, beautiful presentation, great food. The restaurant is outstanding. Just an overall experience. Sure, yeah, I know it's expensive, but I strongly suggest if you're going to go to Moraine Lake, don't park in the car park or drive there or get on a tour bus, because you're just not going to experience the place as it should be. And that's why we stayed there, and I got there very, very early. I was the first one on the rock pile. After about 4:30, 5 o'clock, people that had come up during the night and parked in the car park and slept in their cars, they started to scramble up over the rocks, and you can see their bloody silly lights on their mobile phones. I had one particular fellow, he seen my head torch, and I quickly learnt to turn that head torch off because, as I said, I was there early. When you have the head torch on, it signals everyone else that, oh, that must be the spot we have to go. Now, look, quite frankly, if you set up your camera on a tripod and you're there at 3:30 in the morning, you have every right to tell people to move. And that's what I did in a polite way. So if you get there early and someone, and you've got your head torch on or using your light or whatever, turn it off, because people gravitate to where you're standing. And let's face it, if you've spent all that money, you don't want any interruptions. So I politely told this fellow to go over there in my way that I do things, and he quickly obliged. So, but Moraine Lake is just outstanding. You'll see these images here. I have sold a few of these images actually, which is good. And I'm also printing 2 of these out for the studio here, or for the workers' cottage, on polished aluminium. So, and they're big prints too. They're over 90 or 120 centimetres, one of them. So a great place to stay, Moraine Lake Lodge. But if you can't do that, I suggest you get there as early as possible and claim your spot, because quite frankly, you'll see probably 400 people on top of the rock pile. This rock pile's big, don't get me wrong, but you'll be tripping over people. You've got people taking stupid bloody selfies and things. So you don't want that if you're a serious photographer. So save your money and stay at Moraine Lake Lodge, and I'll put the details of that lodge in the description box below. After that, we went to Lake Louise for the afternoon, met some lovely people, took a few afternoon shots of Lake Louise. I believe, Lake Louise is a very busy place as well. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people there every time we go there. So I went there late afternoon, and then I waited for everyone to leave the area and go and have their dinner, and I stood there and took some really marvellous shots and just let the light do its work. So Lake Louise is another great location. I will put that in the link in the description box below. From there, from Moraine Lake, we went up to Canmore, and that was the end of our trip actually. We spent 5 nights in Canmore. Now Canmore is in the Canadian Rockies. It's a great town, Canmore. Now we also went to Banff. Banff is like a very, very upmarket touristy area. That's where everyone seems to go when they go to the Canadian Rockies. Oh, let's all go to Banff and stay there. Quite frankly, it's It's too expensive, and I think it's overrated. Every second shop's a $2 t-shirt, 5 t-shirts for $5 sort of thing. You know what I mean? Still nice though. You're in the Canadian Rockies. The scenery is absolutely magnificent, but we'll never stay there. It's too busy, too commercial, so that's why we hire a car and travel an hour away from Banff up into Canmore. Now, Canmore is a great, great town. You go out your motel room, or we had an apartment there called the Falcon Crest, which once again, I'll put that information down below in the information box. You leave your apartment and you walk outside and you look, and you're just surrounded by these massive mountains, 360. It's an incredible place, Canmore, and another location which I could quite easily move to. And Canmore, I believe, is probably the best way to go, or best place to stay if you want to see that Banff National Park, Jasper National Park, or if you want to do the Icefields Parkway and then do the glacier walks out from there. You can do it from Canmore. Just a little bit of a drive for you, but you'll save money that way. But reiterating the fact that most Australians, when they go to the Canadian Rockies, they do either the train, the Rocky Mountaineer, which is pretty good. But once again, I've spoken to people that have got off that train for that night and they really haven't seen what we've seen. I think you're restricting yourself if you're going on one of those package deals. That's really not the way to see the place. To see the Canadian Rockies, you need to hire a car, get in it and just drive, because you can drive 4 hours, a 4 hour between point A and point B, but it'll take you 12 hours because there's that much to see. And you don't see that on the train. I mean, people that I've spoken to that I met at Lake Louise that were on the train, and they were staying at Lake Louise itself, which is quite nice, don't get me wrong. I said, did you see this? Did you see that? No, we didn't see that, because they're still on the train. They're not, all they're doing is looking up and looking out. They're not actually going out and experiencing these areas. So I know it's probably an easier way for older people out there to just to book a trip like that. Everything's done for you. But if you're capable, you're fit enough, and you're financially able to do this, to see both Alaska and Canada, especially the Canadian Rockies, just hire a vehicle and just drive. And another free tip, we never use travel agents, because there's a bloody thing called the internet here, just there. Use that. Book all your holidays online, book your accommodation online, book your car rentals online, and you'll save so much money, and you can deal direct with the actual supplier. It's just a better way to go. This trip we saved over $8,000 in commission. I mean, it's ridiculous. So you don't need to use a travel agent to book these holidays. You just don't need to do that. As I said, if you need any more information about traveling to Alaska or Canada, give me a shout out. I'll only too pleased to help you. I'll even, if you're in Sydney or wherever, I'll come and see you. I'll let you in on a few tips, which will help you and enjoy that trip over there. We flew Air Canada. Nah, sorry, don't rate them. But it's the only really easier way to do it is from fly to Sydney to Vancouver with Air Canada. Just not a fan of them. I'd rather fly Qantas or Hawaiian Airlines or probably Air New Zealand, but then you've got to stop over in LA somewhere or somewhere in the States. But we wanted to go direct from Sydney to Vancouver, so Air Canada offer that service, so it wasn't too bad. But if there was an easier way to fly to Canada, I would certainly do that. I wouldn't use Air Canada, so that's just my personal opinion of them. Now, as I said, if you need any more information, just feel free to reach out and ask me. I'm too pleased to help you. We can private message. I can give you my phone number. I really need people. I really want you guys to see it because it is just absolutely fantastic. It's just a fantastic location, both Alaska and the Canadian Rockies. I'll let these pictures do the talking through this video and at the end of this video. So that's it. That is, in a nutshell, what we did for 5 weeks in Alaska and Canada. I could probably tell you a lot more, but time constraints won't let me do that. So other than that, coming up in the next week or so, I'll be going back out into the mountains. There's a few areas that I've been trying to photograph for some time, but the weather's been rather ridiculous here. And now it's starting to calm down a bit. I'm able to get out and photograph these locations that I've been wanting to photograph for some time. And also too, in one of those videos coming up, I'll be using my tilt shift lens. It's a 24mm tilt shift lens. I usually use 14mm ultra wide or 17mm wide, but there's a particular location or a particular subject that I want to photograph here in the mountains not far from here, where I'll need to use the 24mm tilt shift lens, and I'll explain to you why I'm using it and how I use it, or how you use these specific type of lens. It's the 24mm tilt shift lens, and that's in the next video, fingers crossed. So that's it for another episode of Sniper Photography. Hope you've enjoyed that. Hope you've enjoyed the images. I'll put a few up now at the end of this video, and other than that, if you've got anything else to say, please put it down below and I'll certainly get back to you as soon as I can. So until next time, as I always say, be nice to yourself, family and friends, but most of all, you keep shooting, keep smiling. Bye for now.